Welcome back to the Let's Talk Vibes podcast, where we speak soul contracts, illuminating the path to higher understanding. This week, Yiannah and I are joined by a guest, Amelia Struthers. Say hello, Amelia.
Hello, everybody.
Hi,
Amelia is a
Amelia.
master teacher, soul contract practitioner. Her gift of service is to be a cheerleader for the light in everyone. Amelia has uplifted thousands of hearts as an educator, storyteller, singer, songwriter, performance artist, and through offering ascended master channeled readings and her presence on social media as a spiritual awakening teacher. Well, that is just so lovely. Everything that you've done, it's so fitting for the number we're going to talk about today, the
Uh-huh.
20-2, as we have come to say,
Yeah.
because it's very much about kind of journey and movement. And already, just from this little bit of your bio, we can tell that you have had that journey. So I'm so excited to jump into that with you today.
Thank you so much for asking me. It's such a pleasure to be here. I am such a big fan of both of you.
Oh, you're so
Oh, thank
sweet.
you so much. Well,
Thank you.
it's so funny because like I found you as another, we have not met through trainings. A lot of the people that we've had as guests, Yiannah and I know through trainings, through our soul contract community. But for you, I actually found you on Instagram when I was kind of starting to take some more steps for my business. And I was just searching soul contracts. I was like, who else is on here making content? What are they doing? And that's how I found you making these great videos on Instagram, which go ahead and plug your Instagram now. We'll have you plug it at the end, but just so
It's
everyone knows.
essential how to, and on Instagram, it's essential.how.to. So essential how
And
to.
you have some great videos on all of the frequencies.
Mhm.
We at the beginning of our podcast, our first couple episodes, we had those summaries of all those numbers. And so I think you do a great job of, again, with a 3 to 5 minute video, you have to condense it,
Mhm.
but you really can give that great detail and that great kind of
Mhm.
look into the number. So I loved those videos that you had there, and that's how we knew we had to have you come on and find a number to deep dive with you.
That is so great to hear because you want to make sure that you're reaching people in a meaningful way.
hmm
And so to have that feedback is invaluable. So it means a lot to me. Thank you. Yep. And
Well,
I'm a teacher, right? So so it's a good way for me to use many of my skills to
yeah. Do you have
to
threes in your chart?
not a one.
That is
Even with all your
so
music and your
surprising.
singing?
I knew you were going to
Yeah.
ask me. I knew it. No, not a one. There's just one more name I got to check out, which is a nickname. But nope, not one three.
Not even.
Wow.
Oh,
Just your first, have you ever looked up just your first name?
No, but I
oh.
don't have, wouldn't that have to be a C?
Well, it could total up
Or
though.
a good total up? No, I haven't just done Amelia. No.
Yeah, because it's so interesting. Speaking of just first names, that was something so early on that I sort of what is the word? I suspected. I was like, I feel like this because this is the name that you say the most, this energy must be around you a lot.
I don't know how
And
it couldn't be there. Yeah.
yeah, and it's interesting. I brought it up with our teachers in probably level 2 training, and they're like, well, one of them said, it's not kind of your fingerprint, right?
Hmm.
It's not the you're known as kind of that first and last name. That's kind of how people will think about you, right? And I get their point, right? It's not your fingerprint, but it just felt undeniable to me that that name that you're called, that energy would surround you. And we had Amanda on for our 5-5 deep dive a few weeks ago,
Hmm.
and she said as well that energy of the first name, and it was so validating. I was like, I knew it. I just knew
All
it.
right.
So
Okay,
now
All
I
we're
right.
have
I
kind
will
of
look.
we're looking them
I
up
have
more.
I pulled it up, okay? You
Yes.
ready?
Yes.
Obviously it's a single triangle.
Yeah.
So it's a karmic 13-4,
Oh,
a 5-5 talent,
okay.
and a 6-6 goal.
Interesting. So still not a three.
Not a three.
No.
What else is musical? What other?
Well, the
The
six, the
six.
six is
Yeah.
Yeah.
musical. Yeah. The six has that
Yeah.
creativity and that expression, right? But
And the
it is
five is the voice.
right. But it is still wild that you don't have a three. with everything we just talked about.
Do you want to look up another name?
Yes.
Okay,
Are
this
you
is
okay
the
with
one
it being on the podcast?
Yeah, totally.
I
I have a nickname that my family only uses, and it's
Okay.
Tootie, which I already looked up, and that is a 22-4. I think there's a 6 and an 18-9.
Say
But
it again.
Tootie, Tooty. But the name I haven't looked up is the same, that name, but
Oh,
Toodles, Toodles. And that was a name my father gave me from a book that his mother used to read to him. Isn't that darling?
Interesting.
Yeah.
No.
we
Okay.
got we got a 10-1, an 18-9, and an 11-2.
Wow.
There's where the 11-2 was. I was wondering where that 11-2 was in my world. I was wondering.
I'm
Yeah,
just
no
so
threes.
shocked. I'm shocked.
Yep.
Well, here's my theory. You ready? This is
Yeah.
a theory that I have. So I've got lots of fives. And this has come up with people that I do readings for with fives. I think they're kind of iconoclasts, and I know I am, right? I'm just not in the physical the same way that people are in the physical, right? So I just think I buck the system again and again and again. I think fives do that. I don't know. That's my theory. I got to test it out sometime, but this would be a place. It's just so like my life that, oh, this would be the thing. And you'd say you'd think, but it's not.
Yeah. And it just goes to show that, there can be kind of that blending of the energies, right? It's not like this is the one thing and that's
Mhm.
it. It's like, well, when you start to look at it, it's like, well, all that teacher energy, there's so many teacher energies within, like, so many frequencies, but the five, and then with the six for the artistic and the performance side.
Mhm.
And it's like okay, when you start to look at really what's there, it does make sense, but sometimes you just have in your head that number has to be there, that frequency has to be there.
Okay,
And
wait. I'm going to take back
she's,
everything you guys just said, because
What?
when you add up toodles for the soul
mhm.
destiny. Now, I know we are taught there are teachings that when you have a single triangle, there's no soul destiny.
Yeah.
I am not of that belief, and I will always add in that soul destiny. So your
Mhm.
toodles is a soul destiny 3-3.
There we go.
Thank
Okay.
you. We all feel so
Okay.
validated.
It had to be there though, right?
It just had to.
Listen, I am a firm believer that when you feel that energy, it's there. Just like that one episode we had with
With
Stephanie.
Stephanie.
I was like, that 8-8 is there. And we went through
Yeah.
the charts and it was no, and I'm like, there is no, I'm not giving up on it. I know what I'm saying. It feels so right. And then finally we got to, well, does anybody call you Steph? And it was funny because when I said it, it was just kind of like throwing like spaghetti at the wall, like a joke. And there it was. There was that beautiful 8-8. And just like this, your toodles, here is your 3-3. So yes, it's validation. It does exist somewhere. You just sometimes have to search for it.
Mm.
Most of the time, it'll just come up right away. You'll see it. But
Mhm.
what beautiful validation to, yeah,
Yeah. And this is the word that our clients say again and again and again to us. They say it was so validating.
yeah.
And I wonder, with a psychology background, Yiannah, you might have more information about this, but what is it about us that wants validation, right? What is it in our cellular memory, our DNA that makes us just say, yeah, phew, that I thought so, right? It's interesting.
Yeah. And, for me, it's so interesting because the number that shows up for me, we're in kind of the main charts you would look at. I don't have fives, but that
Mm.
five energy just feels, I'm like, I relate to it. And I'm always
Yeah.
like, do I just relate to it because I'm an Aries sun? And I have a lot of Aries energy in my astrology chart. And so I feel like I relate to it. Do I relate to it because I have a lot of ease in the letters of my name? And so I feel like I relate to it. But when I look at, again, how you talked about this more of a nickname, my name, Lauren Rose, my first and middle name from birth, which is like very much kind of like a family name. Like certain people who have known me my whole life will call me that. And that has so many, there are like six fives in that name. It's like two 14 fives and two 5 5s. It's a lot of fives. And actually, very fitting for the episode we're going to do today. When I look at my first name only, there is a 5-5, and there is a 20-2. So circling it back to our episode of Deep Dive for today, let's get to the 20-2.
Well, the 20 is the explorer, right? The 20 just wants to
Right?
go here and go there and go
This is
there. So we
actually
just,
the perfect,
yeah,
it's the
Yeah.
perfect way of showing this episode
Yeah.
that
They
you're
don't
not
want to
gonna,
stick to what you're supposed to do. They just,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
this is not the
Yeah.
sixth where you know what you're gonna do and you're gonna follow it in order. You're gonna move around.
yeah,
It's
we're
amazing.
flexible. Yeah, we're okay. We're okay with that. We're okay with that. It's really good.
So, for
Yeah.
those who don't know and maybe don't remember from our quick overview of the 20-2, the 20, it is all about movement. And at the same time, depending on where this is in your chart, especially if it's in karma, it can be about the rigidity. And that's movement or rigidity physically or of ideas, of philosophy. Something that we see really often with this number is people who grew up in one religion. You know, if you think about something like Irish Catholic, Italian Catholic, where like that religion is very much part of their culture and their upbringing, and then leaving that. And what I even think about is if I ever hear from someone where it's like, again, they had that upbringing, they left, and then they tried different religions. They're kind of were Buddhists for a little bit. They're exploring Judaism. They're just exploring it all. That to me is like pinnacle 20-2 energy. It's like, I just got to get, 15-6 as well, right? I want to taste. There's a lot of similarities between those two numbers. So talk to us about where does this number show up in your chart? What parts of the experience, really stand out for you?
This 22 lands in my spiritual karma.
Mm.
Okay. So that religious part probably, yeah.
Well, I had to think about this. It's the darkest part of my chart, meaning it's the one I'm most I have the hardest time really grasping, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is an inaccurate view of yourself, right? I
Yes.
think part of that is I can't really see myself with this. So, but there are, when I found out and when I had my training with Nicholas et al., um, it was such a relief to say, okay, that explains a lot. So, um, I didn't have that real strong religious background, although I do
Mm.
come from a lineage of ministers, Protestant ministers. And
Oh,
the way that I interpreted this, which I think is a great illustration, like because you can play with what these things are about, right? So although I didn't have the religion as in what we think of like you were describing,
yeah.
my family was my religion. I'm the youngest of
Mm.
six, right? And there were some really big lessons in that family that go on to today. So when I had my daughter, I said, I'm changing this. I'm changing this narrative. I'm changing the rituals. I'm changing the rules, the language. And that's what you would do if you switched religions, right? So that's just for me an example of how you can, if you like, for people who get the book, if you read it really literally, it's okay. Feel it out a little bit, find your way with it a little bit, so how you can make sense of your life with it. Um, so in terms of religion, not so much, but when we look at these numbers, what I love about them is they both have these beautiful phrases,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the 20 is word of peace. And let me
Mm-hmm.
tell you, I know that one very well. And because of where I am in my life cycle, my, upper 50s here, I've had a lot of time to move that karma and move it a little bit more
Yeah.
towards the more positive. My spiritual um talent, right? Our talents help us feed those karma, right? Is 22-4. So I'm not
Oh,
surprised that I think about it in a really expanded way, and the healing
yeah.
really went into this really expanded way. But that word of peace, when I did my training, it moved, and I was just my life like shone in such a different way. I didn't realize what was happening for me. So what it means with 20 word of peace, it's really about, it can be inner conflict, but it can
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
really be about targeted long-term conflict with people
Yep.
and individuals, right? And I have one of those. And naming no names,
They know who they are.
they know who they are. But I didn't realize how much I was gripping on to that. And then when I went through the training, um, and I saw the symbol. And in the training, we look at those symbols, we dance with those symbols, we embody the symbols, we transmute, they come into us. I had this shift and I realized, oh my goodness, he was holding an important part of my story. If I didn't have that part of my story, I would not be continuing my higher consciousness. I would not be continuing my journey of awakening. And it just came naturally. I just did a namaste and said, thank you. While at the same time, not liking it, not liking him.
Right.
Like, doesn't mean I want to sit and have coffee with you, but I get it now. And so it's really clear, we know this, that the inner world is going to reflect our outer world. And that's the beautiful thing about the karmic version of this 20, is that when we can take the risk to let go of something, even if we just start in little steps, who can you let go of first? The person who's driving too slow in front of you, whatever it is, right? Just start to let that go. And with another person I have war with, I was able to drop it. And like magic, I made a video about this. Like magic, the behavior stopped.
Because you
The
chose
person's
peace.
Because I chose peace.
Yeah.
I decided I'm not going to do that thing anymore. And the person's behavior disappeared.
Right.
And I
That's
said,
wonderful.
okay,
Well, and
I'm
that's
in.
like such a main key to this war to peace. It's like because it is that it could show up that internal struggle, or when you are at war with somebody, it is lifelong. One of you has to say, here's a white flag. I'm just done. I don't care. And you have to choose that peace component. And when one person does it, just like when like narcissists, right? They keep coming at you because they know the reaction they're going to get. When you no longer give that reaction, they'll move on because they're not getting the thing that they want. So when you choose peace and you're like, I'm done, I am so done, then the other person has no choice but to also either step away from your life or also be done.
Mhm.
And
And
that is, it's like you have to find that peace component and be okay with it internally, because as we know, this frequency, this 20-2 lesson, it's like you keep that internal conflict and what you can create dis-ease in your body, right? And
right, that
then
rigidity. Mhm.
absolutely. Like, why would you want to manifest that? Just let it go. Like, nothing is worth your health and your sanity and all these beautiful things that we can have. Again, that's easier said than done. I understand that. But it's just about like just choosing that. Just let go.
Right. And where can you do it? I think we have to be really gentle with ourselves, and especially with the two, as a part of that 20-2, hypersensitive, you need a lot of gentleness, right? That's why I say just try something out, even if it's just a little thing, because then that gets the cellular memory in when you see the result, right? There's a whole lot of neurological stuff with that. When we experience it, we can do it in a new way. Um, the subtlety, there's so many subtleties. That's why I just love this system, because there's so many subtleties and you come back again and again and again. It's a lifelong tool to use. But such a significant part of this is the more you feel good about who you are,
Mm-hmm.
then you can start to take that risk of letting go. Because so often we hold on to that conflict because the person got us, right? They hooked us. They got into something that's deep inside of us. But when we can let go of that and say, you know what, I am worthy, because there's a worthiness part with this one too, right? No, I'm worthy. I think with that inner healing, it's easier to start to let go. Like the threat 20 years ago with this person that I started to talk about, I couldn't let it go. It was survival. I had to be in it. But now at this part of my life, it's like, no, the threat's gone. And I'm much more confident than I was. I wish I was then.
But then
But
that's part of that two component, right? That wisdom. And that main
yes.
lesson is that foolishness to wisdom. When you're in that, and I know that sounds kind of terrible, that foolishness. You're not foolish, but it's like that emotional reaction. So when there's someone that's poking the bear, you are going to immediately react on emotion to the thing that just happened to you. When you learn to think objectively and not get triggered and just take a step back and go, I'm not going to immediately react. I'm just going to logically think about the situation from a bird's eye view and make the best possible decision that's going to give me the best outcome. That's that wisdom, right? And
Yep.
this war to peace conflict, it requires that for you then to step into that wisdom and go, oh, duh, I could just choose peace.
Yeah.
I could just let it go and be done like this.
Yeah.
Well,
You know,
what
and
really
they work together.
Yeah. Well, like what really stood out to me, Amelia, is when you talked about feeling safe. Because again, going with the two and that emotional, kind of reactivity component, I think so much about our nervous system, right? When we're in flight, fight or flight, it's
Mm.
very different than when we're in a more centered and grounded place. But when our nervous systems are kind of conditioned to keep us in this fight or flight response, that's also part of how we keep making these quote unquote foolish. And I like that, Yiannah, you kind of specify foolish is just sort of emotionally led decision. But that's very natural and understandable when your nervous system is really thinking you're in that place. And so part of it is, again, being able to move yourself out of that in order to kind of reach that place of objectivity. And you mentioned also that when you're in the training, it's like you kind of just had that shift in order to let things go. And I think that's very apt for the 20-2, because again, the 20 is about movement. One of the gifts of the 20 is to be able to really move to that next step very quickly. Like, well, kind of once you're
Mm.
it's almost again of like, I didn't consciously choose it, I just shifted. It just shifted in just that ability to move. Because I'm sure there are a lot of people listening who are like, I would love for that shift to come to me. I would
Yeah.
love that to shift.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes, I almost want to say, what happened in your mind? How did you do that? And then I realized, I was like, you probably didn't. That energy just moved. That's the beauty of this, is that you can just move from one place to the other in a snap, in a heartbeat. You're not there anymore. And if you
Oh,
don't have this energy, you can kind of be looking at like, how did you do that? Because I'm trying really hard to replicate that. And it's like, I couldn't
it's
tell you if
true.
I
You
tried.
know, I've had to explain that for so long. Thank you so. There's so many things to say about this number, my friends. There's so many things to say about it. But so I was a single mom raising my daughter, and there'd be moments where I would just do the mom thing, which is like, ah, right? Just like, ah. And
Yeah.
then I would like go into my room, and then I would turn around and come out and I'd say,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry. And now she has grown up, and she said she's 28 years old. She's a therapist, beautiful woman. And she'll say all her life, she'll say, you know what? I was never afraid of anger because my mom would always come back and apologize.
Mm.
Mm,
What a gift, right? And it's like, I
beautiful.
think now that I understand, especially Lauren, I'm learning while we're sitting here, of course, right? Um, that had to be part of it. And it can be scary actually, it can be scary for some people when you can shift that fast. Like, wait, you were just mad a minute ago. It's like, yeah, but that's the flexibility too of this number. Um, and change, that's another big part of this number too, right? And I think that's just another way of saying it, being able to move through changes, and
Hmm.
whether that's your emotions or a
And very
situation.
flexible, just
Mhm.
very adaptable. Like they're just want to go, and a part of it's like easygoing, right? So there's somebody very close to me in my life, and he doesn't have any 20-2s like as his main frequencies, but
Mhm.
in his birth name and like in each letter energy, I mean, he has so many 20s. And when I first realized that, I was like, oh my God. But then I realized he is so easygoing. He
Mhm.
just moves like the wind, like nothing ruffles his feathers. And I've always admired that about him. But it wasn't until I saw that beautiful 20 show up in his chart where I was like,
Mhm.
oh my God, not only does this make so much sense, but now like visually I've connected those dots, because it's one thing to read it, it's another to experience it and to like really have it show up for you. Because I'm like I don't like to read, and like I'm not good at reading and learning. I'm more of a visual and hands-on and experiential learner. Hello, haha, which is what this frequency is. But I don't have any 20s in my chart. But my point is, that's how I got it. And I saw it and I was like, that makes so much sense. It's just so
Yeah.
just go with the flow. Just go with the flow.
And that's the beautiful thing that we're talking about, right? We're talking about this war to peace and all those things. But this number is such breadth that on the other side, it's like exactly what you're saying. There's so many beautiful things about this. Having that height, having that wisdom, being a safe place for people to come, being able to show people the way because you've done all this exploration and all this investigation, never wanting to retire, just go, 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 go and serve
Yeah.
like that, right?
And I can't remember if in Nicholas's book, if he uses this phrasing to describe the 20 or the 2, but for one of them, he describes it as the suspension in the car, right? It keeps everything
Yes,
kind of
It's the
smooth.
two.
just
The
smooth
two.
things
Two.
out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
which one is it?
Because it's
Yeah.
the spring. So the symbol is like that
Yeah.
spring. And that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also I remember from the last time that I read it a few months ago, describing it as a soft place to land, right? And I think that kind of goes with what we're saying here. And it's actually interesting that your daughter is a therapist because we often see people with 2s are therapists. That's like a role that they may end up in a career. So that's interesting. And I want to come back to what we were talking about, how quickly the 20-2 can move and be adaptable, and yet sometimes can be rigid. And I think the astrology really demonstrates this very well.
Yep. Talk
That
about that, please.
yeah, the the change aspect, that like I can be a totally different emotion super quickly. That's the 2 representing the moon. And as someone in astrology who is a Cancer rising, which means the moon is my ruling planet, Cancer risings are known to kind of go through all of the emotions super quickly because the moon is always changing signs. So that's that kind of movement, that continuous movement. You're not staying in the same place for very long, very much the moon. But the rigidity of it, that's the 20 represented by Saturn. So
Mhm.
for those who don't know astrology, Saturn is like the most rigid, kind of restrictive planet. And coming back to, I'm curious how this number might have shown up in your life, is actually that Saturn aspect, because this is when I see people who have a 20 in karma, and if they haven't related to that religious aspect of, I grew up in this religion, I changed religions, then the next thing I always ask is about their relationship with their father. Was your father very strict and rigid? Because Saturn also represents the father. And one client that I had
There he
talked
is.
about, oh, look at Papa Struthers. Um, but one client I had, talked about her father was in the military, so kind of brought
Um,
that rigidity of this is how things go into the home. And so she could really, relate to that aspect of it. But it's sounding, I mean, it doesn't look like maybe that's the case. Just you have this picture there, but although maybe, I don't know, what was that relationship?
you're blowing my world because, yeah, like I said, like this is the number that I'm like, I don't know really everything that's there yet. I'm still peeling this onion. My father was very rigid. He had a lot of trauma growing up. I
Mm,
was the only one that he didn't have a conflict with. I was
Mm,
Tootie, right? I was Toodles. He loved
mm-hmm.
me. But
Yeah,
I observed that and I knew where you could go, where you couldn't go, you know. But
interesting.
I'm a Cancer sun. That's my sun sign. I was born in July. And when I think of the moon, I just think like, I just want to be cozy. I just want to be home. I don't want to go anywhere. Right. And this
Yeah.
20 is like, you got to move. You got to go. But I think my my projects, my ideas, the things that I want to do, and I want to share it, obviously, because I'm on social media sharing that, showing people the way, like a 2, being a teacher. That's how I move. But I could get very
And that makes
comfortable.
sense, with the fact that it is in your spiritual triangle. This is again where sometimes with some of the numbers, it's hard to tell the difference. It's hard to see
Mhm.
how that shows up differently. But I think this is an area where you can see, okay, well, it's not physically moving around the world. but your ideas are really moving and being able to, like we talked about, that shift, just to shift something so easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, there's some other parts about this number I want to share with you guys if you picked these up too, which make me giggle a little bit. First is rebellious. That's a word that comes out a lot about this. And I kind of think about, yeah, there's some rebellion. I can feel that. Um, but I just did a reading for someone. This is how it works. The magic of all this, right? I said, okay, 2022, I'm gonna go there. But I want to learn more about it. And someone just showed up and had three of them in their chart.
Wow.
And I learned so much. And for the War of Peace part, this person said, nope, once somebody's off my list, they're off forever. They're off
Done.
for the rest of my life. And so I said, oh, good, we got something to work with here. This is great.
Did they also have a
Um,
13-4?
no,
Oh, interesting.
no, 13-4. That's good.
Yeah.
But there's this idea that I remember the first time I read it, I was like, what? Lawbreaker, rebellious, right? That's when it's more in the physical triangle. And I just think that's so fascinating, the breadth of this number, where you can land with it. So when you see somebody, and this happens all the time, you see the chart first before they come to talk to you, and you can make assumptions, but we learn not to because you just don't know what is going to show up. And you don't want to say to somebody, "Are you a lawbreaker?" Right? It's like, whoa, how does that function within all this flexibility? And
I've also seen it show up to where they were literally in war. Like they were in
mm,
the military. And when you're talking about not wanting to retire, a lot of people who are in the military, they stay like lifelong. That's like where they commit and they come back and they go and they come back and they go and that is their thing. So it was always interesting to me when I would bring up this war to peace and they're like, no, I don't have conflict with people and I don't have any internal struggle, but I am in the military or I'm in the Navy, like that kind of thing. And that also brings in that travel component, right? Because this 20-2, this
mm,
20 loves to travel, right?
mhm.
I'm convinced now because we do have this strict policy, you do not look up people's charts that don't ask for it, right? I
Yep.
am convinced that my sister, Miss World Traveler, needs to like
Yeah.
explore like every week of her life, has to have this 20 in her chart. But I have not been asked to look it up yet, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But one day I will for sure. But yeah, people they don't want to be confined. They want to explore in different
Yeah.
cultures and different
Hmm.
cities and different countries and all that. It's such a huge component. I've never not seen that being active in somebody with this frequency,
Hmm.
regardless of the placement.
Hmm.
Whether
Hmm.
they're able to travel or can afford, the point is they love and they want to travel. They want to go.
Hmm.
They're like, I'm out of here. I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, you go.
Well, I do a lot of traveling. Um, well, spiritually. This is in my spirit, right? This is in my spiritual triangle, and I have a 22-4 as my talent. So I do a lot of traveling,
I
but
love it.
it's not necessarily here on the planet.
Can you imagine somebody who's just not open to spirituality,
I know.
hearing you saying, yeah, I travel all the time, but not in this planet? They're like,
No.
okay, ladies. I
The,
love it.
yeah. Well, this is why the people that come to me, I say we need to introduce you to each other because so many of them feel isolated with this, right? And that's hard if you certainly you want to communicate and connect and all of that. That can just ow,
Hmm.
right? So yes, I do a lot of traveling, and I always have since I was little. I came in and it was like I was saying to my family, hey, did you realize there's this place? It's so cool, right? Meaning the universe.
Mm.
And they would just look at me and go, "Mm, what are you talking about? No, right?
Wow.
That's where there was a lot of rigidity from my whole
Mm.
family, just like, no, who are you?
Yeah.
That was
Oh
hard.
yeah. Well,
That is so interesting.
another part of this 20 movement aspect that I've actually found a lot too is within relationships. So typically
Mhm.
these people who have this as a major frequency, they don't want the typical relationship. Or like what I have found, they'll be like, okay, I love being in a relationship. We've been married for 20 years, but in my relationship, I have this rule where I'm like, for 1 month a year, I go and I do my own thing. It's very unconventional. I want to go explore. I want to go learn. I want to go grow spiritually, whatever it is. I just want my space and my freedom to go do this thing. But I'll be back and I love you, but I got to go do this thing. And I need you to be okay with that. And the successful 20s have that. So that's you.
Ding, 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 ding. You
Yeah.
found a winner. Yeah. My husband has a job where he goes away 4 months out of the year for th
Mm.
for 3 or 4 nights a week. And it's like,
Mm.
okay,
Yes.
all right. And
Me time.
and I got sevens too, so it's just like I don't always want to show everybody who I am, right? Just
Right.
and then he comes back and it's an adjustment and people say, "Oh, you must be so happy he's back." It's like, "Yeah, I am. Of course I'm excited he's back." But it's like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about, okay, I have property in another state. It's like I just want to build a little house so that I know I can just go. I can just be there and just not have to be whatever. Yeah, that has a lot of meaning to me.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also the two hypersensitive, right? Oh my gosh. I wrote a song calling myself the dramatic daughter because it's just bing ding ding on that too, spring, emotional, all over the place. So you need that rest. You need that you need that inner peace again to get there. Um, and a lot of, I would say my other travel has to do in terms of religion. I was brought up Protestant. I married a man who was Jewish, and I totally immersed myself in Judaism and raised my daughter in Judaism. And then all the spirituality, I do chanting.
Mm.
I have, I've been in Amachi's arms, ascended masters and all that. And I've been working with an ascended master for 30 years now.
Mm.
Um, and then I married a Quaker. So I
Mm.
love that too, that peace and harmony and that one true light within. So it all just has lined up with all the things that you are.
Well, that is that very quintessential 20-2 experience I was talking about, you know? Yeah, those
Yeah, so
different being in those different religions. Yeah.
I didn't feel like that, but maybe I haven't woken up to it enough yet, Lauren. Maybe it really was rigid. Oh,
Well, I mean, again, it doesn't necessarily always have to have been rigid, but how many people in their lives can say that they have really lived with three different religions, or four if you count spirituality as sort of a religion? But, it's like that's not typical for a lot of people. It's like, my grandmother, for example, right? Catholic, born Catholic,
sure.
devout Catholic, her entire life. And my mom, right, would have had that sort of devout Catholic upbringing, did leave the church, but, has always kind of been interested, like, she kind of found herself, like, found her way to the Unitarian church, right? She loved that kind of community and that aspect of it. But
Mm,
the Catholic Church was not for her. But yeah, it's like I think sometimes you take aspects of your life maybe for granted of not recognizing like that actually
totally.
is pretty unique and like that's not the experience most people are gonna have. And you kind of just need it like reflected back to you a little bit of like that fits. It's fitting.
Yeah, and that's what we do when we do readings for people, right?
Yeah.
There's that. They just think this is normal, or people tell me that this is not normal, and we can say, actually, you're
It's perfect.
good. It's perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And that's why for me, I actually really love, like, obviously, I do love when you kind of tell someone about their chart and you know nothing about them and you get to be able to say, here's the things. And then they're so blown away by how accurate it is. But personally, I love when, especially early on, and when I had first come to the system and I was doing practice readings for friends, being able to do my prep for the reading and making notes about their lives, things that I already know about their lives, and showing how this was fitting the energy. Like I actually really love that aspect to it because again, you could tell someone something about it and they're just not even making the connection that that does exist in their life, right?
Mhm.
That's like they're not
Mhm.
even putting that piece together. So I
Mhm.
love when you know them to a level where you can draw the connections and show them how it
Mhm.
connects. It's really
Mhm.
beautiful.
Right. And when you really can have that conversation, it's beautiful. It's challenging and sometimes painful. I see people that I work with, family struggling, and I can't say for sure that it's an 8, but I can kind of tell when it's like
Oh,
when somebody first comes on and they just start doing the blah blah talking to you, and it's like they're telling you all the things that they are. But it's hard. But this is where I'm going to do the royal we for the three of us, have such faith that when it's your time to have a reading, do your contract, or maybe it's never, ever, ever, right? There's just a faith in that. And I think that's what helps us be really good practitioners is that we're not doing a hard sell on anybody. On my Instagram, yeah, I'm saying I'm doing the arrows, point down here if you want more information, but only the people that are really ready will do that. And if
Right.
somebody doesn't, it doesn't break my heart. It's okay. But it's a tender thing when you see somebody struggling and you wish you could just say, "Oh, let me look at your numbers."
You
yeah.
Look
know,
at it.
it's interesting because I recently had somebody that I know say to me, "Hey, are you ever going to do a reading for me?" And I'm like, "Well, you are like 2% negative spiritual. So I would never even think that's even something that you want, like zero."
Right.
And then, so then we pulled up the chart and I start reading it. And he's like, "No, no, that's not me. No." And I'm thinking to myself, I know you inside and out. Yes, you embody exactly what I'm saying, but I let it go, right?
Mm.
And it was like about maybe a month later. He says, "Oh, you know how you told me X, Y, and Z? Well, I started doing A, B, and C to get to X, Y, and Z." And I was like, okay. Like it intrigued me because as quickly as he asked for that reading, he completely like set it aside and moved on with his life. We never talked about it again. And I was like, okay, I am good with that. Whenever he's ready, if he ever wants to talk about it again, I'm here. But then to see that clearly, consciously and subconsciously, that did something to him and it created some kind of movement for him to be like, oh, maybe there's something to this. And what if this thing did transpire or whatever? He had a 19-1, okay?
Oh.
Um, so it's interesting to hear when you have people who typically would not be open to that. And then you see the impact it has, even if it's a little bit, you're like, oh, you planted that seed of like hope and optimism and all this stuff. And now when they're ready, they definitely will come back. But I will say it's hard to read for people really close to you because all your personal judgments are there. And for example, for me,
Yeah.
I will never look at my chart because I'm very like, I'll say, no, this is exactly where it belongs, and I know what the answer is, and blah, blah, blah. And then when I have someone else who I go to, when she looks at it for me and I'm like, here's what's going on, she will come up and she will read it from an outsider's point of view. And she'll get to an answer where I'm like, I never would have gotten to that because I was too close to home. I would never have allowed myself to think that that was a thing.
Mhm.
So I have found I don't even try anymore. I just go to someone else and I'm like, do it for me. And they're like, okay.
That's
Yeah,
so
it's
funny
really
because I love looking at
yeah.
my chart. I
Yeah.
like do it all the
No.
time. Like I can think all the time, oh, this is that. Oh, this is the self-criticism, this is the perfectionism, this is the wanting to hide, this is the unworthiness, this is the six gang
Mm.
stuck. I do it constantly. Oh, this is my 12-3 rushing me because I am continuously in conversation with those energies. As soon as I recognize what's coming up, I start to talk to it and I say, we don't have to do that. We don't have to get stuck
Yeah.
in this little spiral of this pattern. 12-3, I know that you're rushing. This doesn't need to happen right now. This can happen later. This can happen 3 years from now. It's okay.
I'm in a little conflict with this. I love this conversation because I'm a teacher, right? So and I teach college now. So I'm really interested in reflection, that kind of learning. So I started developing a tool to give to my clients and make available to anybody, but a tool to reflect on how to think about the negative moving into the positive and taking those steps and being and doing it consciously. But then that is that too much here, right? Do we want people to be driven by their own place of growth and consciousness? I don't know, but I'm gonna give it a little test drive and see how people respond to it because I'm like you, Lauren. I like to think really methodically about how to move things. But I'm a 20, so I want to move things, right?
Yeah.
The thing is,
And yeah.
what I've noticed is sometimes we as practitioners, we're like, for example, the 12, you're like, well, anytime I'm rushing, it goes straight to the 12. But sometimes it's not just that one frequency that we always associate. And that's where I get stuck within myself. I can see it clearly from everybody else. When it's me, I'm like, well, it can't just be my six and it can't just be my fives. Right. And then someone else will come in, they'll be like, yeah, it's the combination of X, Y, and Z and playing out, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, thank you. Because for a client, I would have absolutely picked that up. But for myself, you're just it's too like, and I don't like to live in my soul contract. I don't like to live by the numbers because for me, I'm like, that restricts me. And I'm like,
You got
no,
a 20, right? You
I
got a
do
20?
not. I do
She
Oh,
not.
okay.
doesn't.
It's like, oh, that
See,
restricting.
I don't know. I guess I'm just the opposite in that I love to live in it because that is, for me, it's a language. To say don't live in your soul contract is to say stop speaking your mother tongue. Don't ever speak English again. It's like, oh, now you're making me speak the other languages like all the time. I can never just speak English. That's where I'm most comfortable. That's how I can most easily express and recognize and understand the world around me. Take me out of my soul contract, I'm lost. You feel restricted. This is how I understand the world around me. I feel lost without it. So it's just different that, again, it's just that different perspective. I'm like, it is my understanding of the world around me. It's how I am able to navigate and move forward. It's not my restriction. It is, well, as Nicholas would say, the roadmap. It is my map.
And what I love about this conversation is there's room for everybody. There's no wrong
Yeah.
door. There's
Yeah.
no wrong door. And when we have somebody come to us and they show up on the screen, I say, welcome to your reading. I have no idea where it's going to go. And what I always tell them
Right.
is, I know what these numbers mean, but you know the story of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do this together. And I often notice they also think they're going to just sit back and I'm just going to talk the whole time. It's like, no, no, no. I need to hear your stories. But, let's make this a dialogue. It's beautiful. There's room for everybody in this. And again, it's such a relief to me that my ego isn't involved anymore with trying to
Mm-hmm.
get clients. It's just such faith and trust because all the fours I have, um, and the 13-4 that just make the space for people to come in.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a lovely, different way to live. And when you do a spiritual business, there's some people who think, well, you can't be charging if it's a business like this. But
Mm-hmm.
when you see it as an exchange of energy, and this is all about
Mm-hmm.
the energy, and when there's room for people to come in as they are, and for me not to be telling them who they are, I think it just breaks all of that up and makes it a beautiful process. It's organic, it's natural, and really we are exactly where we need to be at all times, whether we're looking at our charts or not.
Yeah. And actually, you are a beautiful example of career aspect, right? For this 20 frequency, that movement. You're like, I am a teacher, and then I also do soul contracts, and then I sing and I write and I X, Y, and Z. And it's like, I'm going to
Oh
do
yeah.
whatever feels right to me, right? And that's such a beautiful example of how it can show up. And that never wanting to retire, that is an actual thing of this frequency. They're like, I always just want to be doing something. I actually
Yeah.
I had a client and that came up, so then we were talking about when I was explaining the 20 frequency, I brought up the never wanting to retire, and she's like, I can't wait to retire. Like, I just like, I can't, like, it struck her. She's like, I can't have that be a thing. And I said, girlfriend, it could be whatever you want it to be, you know? But it's like very often we're like, we want to be done doing this thing, but then something else creeps up, right? Something
Right.
else that brings you that joy where you don't feel, I can only speak for myself, but it feels like for me, when I read soul contracts or when I talk about soul contracts, I don't feel like I'm working. Right now, I don't feel like I'm working. I am enjoying
Mm.
myself. And when you do that, you don't feel like you're working a day in your life. So that retirement thing kind of goes out the window because you're like, well, it doesn't feel like work. So when you find that joy and that passion in what you're doing, oh my God, it's a game changer. It's a game changer.
Hmm. And then with the 20s, you want to show other people how you did it. You want to
Mm.
just bring them along. And you never stop doing that. I mean, I run into people in the grocery store and we get into conversations. Right? It's like, oh, have you thought about this or that or the other thing? So it's easy. You're right. Absolutely. It's like if you think about retiring from your survival job, which I definitely have a job that's in survival. I cannot wait for that to be done. And I should be careful what words I use. But um, I love that. And it's so true. We have to I love coaching people up around the book because they take things very, very literally with it. Like one person who had an 11 said it's death to life. And what does this mean? I don't have a lot of death. And I said, well, let's look at it as a metaphor. Where are you growing yourself? Where are you changing into a new person? So that's the other thing I love about what I was just saying, this tool. It encourages us to use our intuition to feel it out, to feel what does that word retirement mean to me? How do I use my imagination? Because when we're in our imagination, we're with spirit.
Mm.
I just love it so much. And I love talking about it
I
with you,
know.
right? It's lovely.
I'm like, I gotta double check if my mom does have a 20-2 because she is someone who retired and then like started a consultancy business because she just really couldn't retire. And I'm like, does she have this number? I don't remember. I'm like, literally got to go check because it's
Yeah.
gonna.
One of my, or Amelia, we were talking about early childhood before, and one
Mhm.
of my, so
She
in
does.
my, when I did my beautiful, when I did my early childhood training, right, and then I had to go and shadow a director
Mhm.
for X amount of weeks. Her
Mhm.
name was Betty, and she was amazing. But she was like, oh, I'm so done. Like, I'm about to retire. I think she was like 70 something, but she loved her work and she loved what she did. It was a non for profit. She
Mhm.
really was very involved in the community. And so I finished my program there. Her and I have kept in touch. And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden, she had this huge retirement party, and I went. I think I had just had my daughter. So this was like a year and a half ago, what am I saying? She's almost 3. So this was like almost 3 years ago.
Mhm.
Next thing I know, I think it was like months later, I'm like, hey, Betty, you want to go to lunch? And she's like, well, I took on an early childhood professor role at the local
Oh,
college. And she's like,
cool.
so I'm like, what happened to retirement? Sure enough, she's got a 20, but she's just like, I
Mhm.
can't sit at home. And I'm like, okay, girlfriend, get it. Like, whatever. But it was just such a perfect example of how that would show up.
And I love that too because I really have a thing about ageism. There's just rampant
Yeah.
ageism, right? And I'm going to be 58. I just go, go, go. To some people, that's ancient. Like, what are you doing? How can you be
Yeah.
sitting up straight? So I love that. Well, of course, my husband's 70, and there's no stopping. Like, it doesn't happen. So if you got a 20, great. It goes right along with aging because who won?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny because again, my mom technically retired from her career, her job, 7 years ago, and has this consultancy business. And she does, sure enough, in her current name, 20-2, right in the
Yeah.
physical karma.
Uh,
I was like, it's gotta be there. I don't remember. Yeah,
This is
there it
what we
is.
do, everybody out there. We think numbers. But it's gotta be there. It's gotta
There's a
be
reason we
there.
say we speak soul contracts, right?
yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah.
It's why I binge on your podcast.
Oh,
yeah.
thank you. Listen, it's such a beautiful way for all of us to use our speech frequencies and feel like we're heard and express the thing that we love. And it brings us so much joy. And like, it's such a fun thing. And honestly, the community around it is very nice. It's very nice. The support and people who just they're so eager to like they're like, yeah, of course I want to discuss soul contracts. And yes, I want to have a conversation and just like shoot the shit about this frequency or this topic. And it's like we share the same energy. We're like, oh my God, yes, okay. It is. It's so fun. And that's why we obviously have done how many episodes now? Yeah, anyway, it's a lot. Way more than we've released.
Give me a 5 anytime because I love my 5 and I just want to talk 5 with people.
Yeah.
Like, how did you experience that? You know, like what kind of magical things have happened to you? And talk about magic. I've been blown away by the magical things that have happened in my readings. It's the synchronicities.
Yep.
Just if I, my 4/4 in physical karma is getting a boost to believing. Just the world that we live in, if we open up our eyes enough and we open up our spirit and open up our vessel enough, the possibilities and the magic are just beautiful.
Well, it's funny.
Amelia, go ahead.
I just released this video where I actually talked about that exactly. I was in a call with a client who had a karmic 4/4, physical karma 4/4. And he was going through this huge awakening. And him and I were discussing how you really got to step into that faith and into that trust and just surrender and just know that source will always provide for you because source has always provided. And here we are. We were in this in-depth conversation. We spent so much time on that because we were very much in agreement and we felt the energy of that, right? And I get off that call and what happened was, Lauren, I think you've heard this story before. What happened was my phone was going crazy and I look at my phone and some reel or post that I had put on TikTok like a month or so ago was going viral.
Oh.
And I mean, viral, like 30,000 views, nothing like there's no millions. Okay. But still for me, I was like, I went from like 400 views to like, it was going crazy. And then by the time I got off my phone and I got off of TikTok and then I went to go message him to say, oh my God, we were just talking about this and look at the synchronicities, how it shows up for you. In that same moment, he posted on on his social media, just a quick story, had a reading with Yiannah about soul contracts, check it out, whatever. By the time I woke up the next morning, I was booked for the next month and a half. And the point is exactly what you just said. It's that faith and that 4/4 frequency of just trusting and believing and knowing that it's going to come for you. Just let it go. It's going to come for you. Know it and feel it and embody it. And I knew it was coming. I felt the energy of it. But then when it actually comes, it is a little bit of a, oh my God, like it's here. What do I do now? I mean, now like that was a while ago. So now like, I'm sitting in it. But it's so freaking true. And it's not just words that we speak. They are so powerful and so important. And the information that comes out of soul contracts can absolutely change your life for the better, can absolutely get you out of the challenging karmic aspects of where you struggle and into the positive. And it's a simple, I know it's simple, but it really is a simple mind shift and just changing that one thing that alters every other thing in your life. And the 5s, right? They jump timelines. That's like a huge thing for them. And like that whole spiritual aspect. I hate timelines. I hate hearing about it because in my mind, I'm like, am I just like saying that to just appease myself and make myself feel better that like, oh, this thing didn't work out because I switched timelines or you know what I'm saying? That whole thing. But when you do that, when you shift your vibration, when you shift your frequency and your thoughts, that's essentially what you're doing. You're altering how fast something comes to you. You're altering what is coming to you, and you're just allowing it to be, and you're creating this beautiful reality. My rant is done. I think I talked.
I love your rant. I love your rant. A lot of the magic that comes along for me is I pull a card for everybody before I do a reading. Okay. And I pulled a card for us. Do you want to know what the card was?
Yes, please.
So I use the inner child cards,
Oh,
which I got back in the 90s. So I pulled this, the six of
Oh,
crystals. That's a little gnome. Do you know
yes.
what this is about?
No.
It's about a six-sided star.
Oh yeah, look at
oh,
the snowflake.
It's
I
all
love
about
that.
the power of the six-sided symbol, which is the soul contract.
I
And let
love
me,
that.
I
Yes, tell us.
know
Read
wow.
it.
there is a sense, well, there's a sense of ecstasy in this card because of the ultimate success it portrays. Group work,
Oh.
There you go.
perseverance, loyalty, and goal orientation are key components as one seeks to reach seemingly impossible heights. The number six can refer to peak experiences. It is usually expansive, 20, and positive in nature. When you receive the six of crystals, it is a sign to redouble your efforts to achieve important goals. The climb may be steep, but the rewards will be plentiful. Remember to honor the process and have faith in yourself. What were we
Mm,
just talking about?
yeah. Yeah.
Faith.
Mm.
If your work is humble, I love this part. We also were talking about this. If your work is humble and carries a purpose beyond yourself, you may expect great fulfillment and happiness in the years to come.
Mm.
On an elevated level, this card depicts global service and the ideal of world harmony symbolized by the beautiful snowflake.
Oh, I love
That's so
that.
beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that and how apropos.
Yeah.
This is the magic. I
Yeah.
pull a card and I read it at the end. I was like, okay, we were just talking about this. So thank you so much for this time.
Mm.
What
Yes.
a
And,
gift.
I was going to say, we'll have to have you back because, I mean, just that 22-4, and you were talking about, the astral travel. I feel like there's so much more to your spiritual journey that we weren't able to get to in this conversation. And we're going to need another conversation to talk about that. And,
Mm.
you shared a little bit of a story, which we'll tease that you'll tell it next time, just about like a song. And I feel like there's probably so many spiritual meanings to your song. So we're going to have to dive into that on another conversation.
Okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Amelia,
you.
why don't you let our listeners once again know where they can find you?
I can be found on Instagram at essential.how.to. Essential how to. I can also be found on TikTok, essential how to, and my website, essentialhowto.com.
I love it.
Beautiful. Well, everybody, head over to our Instagram, Let's Talk Vibes podcast. Let us know what you thought of this episode. Do you have a 20-2 in your chart? How does that show up? Is it more of the religious? Is it more of the strict father? Is it that ability to just shift ideas and perspectives really quickly? We want to know. And when you're there, head over, of course, over to Amelia's page in order to check out some of her videos on the soul contract system.
And as always, everybody, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment on our content. It is the best way to support us, and we appreciate it so much. Have a beautiful, blessed day. Bye.
Bye.